The courtroom felt colder than stone, yet Ethan said, "This is absurd, I don't even remember her." A nurse's voice echoed in his head, repeating the child's name like a verdict. The baby's cry tore through his chest as the judge whispered words that chained him to a truth he never saw coming. His fiancée, Claire, clutched her purse tighter, her lips trembling with a mix of fear and betrayal. Ethan's hands shook, his pulse crashing in his ears, as the DNA test result was placed before him. He said, "No, this can't be real." The judge looked over his glasses, his voice sharp as he said, "The evidence is undeniable." The gallery stirred, whispers like knives cutting his skin. Claire's eyes welled with tears, but she did not move closer. A gavel struck, and it felt like the sound sealed his fate forever. Ethan said, I don't remember that night." His breath fractured, his voice a cracked mirror of denial. The world spun, and all he could hear was the baby's fragile sob, pulling him into a past he never wanted to face. Ethan's world shattered as he stumbled into the courthouse corridor, cold marble underfoot, mocking his unsteady steps. He pressed against the wall, gasping, "I don't even remember her." Claire followed, her eyes sharp with fear and doubt. She said, "Ethan, tell me it isn't true." His voice broke, "I swear, I can't recall that night." Claire turned her face away, tears trembling on her lashes. The corridor echoed with whispers from strangers, shadows stretching long against the walls. Ethan clutched his chest, the sound of the baby's cry still echoing in his ears. His thoughts swirled in jagged fragments, denial, terror, shame. Claire's silence grew louder than his words, her grip on reality slipping as she muttered, "They wouldn't lie. DNA doesn't lie." Ethan sank lower, sweat dripping from his hairline, as if every breath drained him. His world was collapsing, and Claire was slipping further away with each heartbeat. The whispers grew sharper, strangers passing with judging eyes. Ethan heard one man mutter, "Another man ruin." His chest tightened. Claire stepped closer, but didn't touch him. She said, "If you lied to me, everything ends here." Ethan pleaded, "Claire, please, I don't know how this happened." She clenched her fists, her silence screaming louder than her words. Shadows stretched longer across the corridor floor, the cold marble reflecting their fractured faces. Ethan's thoughts spiraled into panic, fear clawing at him like invisible chains. He whispered to himself, "It can't be true, it can't." Claire stared, her jaw tight, her breath uneven. The world had turned hostile, every look accusing, every step heavier than stone. Ethan staggered toward the courthouse exit, air heavy with judgment. A woman in the crowd hissed, shameful. His steps faltered. Claire followed but kept her distance. She said, "What if they're right?" Ethan turned, his voice cracking, "You think I would hide something like this?" Her eyes narrowed, not in anger but in fear of betrayal. The crowd outside loomed larger, faces turning to watch. The whispers cut deeper than any gavel, slicing through his resolve. He pressed a trembling hand to his forehead, whispering, "I can't breathe." Claire's tears spilled silently as she looked at him like a stranger. The baby's cry haunted him still, echoing in his chest. The city street outside was alive with noise, yet Ethan only heard his ragged breath. Claire said, "I don't even know who you are anymore." Her words froze him in place. He whispered, "Claire, I swear." But his voice was drowned by horns and footsteps. The world spun, his heart slamming against his ribs. Claire turned away, arms crossed as though to shield herself. Ethan reached out, but his hand fell limp before touching her. The sound of a baby crying still echoed in his mind, louder than the street itself. He whispered again, broken, "This can't be real." The crowd moved around them, strangers brushing past, yet the space between them felt like a canyon. Claire's silence became the final blow of the day, cutting deeper than words ever could. Ethan sat in his apartment, lights dim, blinds drawn tight against the daylight. His chest heaved as he muttered, "How could this be my life?" Claire paced near the door, torn between leaving and listening. She said, The truth broke us, Ethan, and you keep denying it. He pressed his hands over his face, whispering, "Because I don't remember her. Because I don't remember that night." His words came like shards, jagged and desperate. Claire froze, her hands trembling as she said, "A child doesn't appear from nothing." He groaned, his voice raw. "I've fought my whole life not to be like my father, and now?" Silence fell, heavy and suffocating. The air was stale, thick with regret, and the ghost of choices unmade. Ethan's shoulders shook as he whispered, "What if I'm not enough? What if I ruin her like he ruined me?" Claire's eyes softened for a flicker, then hardened again as she turned away. Ethan's gaze drifted to the window, raindrops streaking like memories he wished away. He whispered, "I was just a boy when my father left. I swore I'd never be that man." Claire stood silent, the sound of rain tapping against glass louder than her breath. He said, "Now the world tells me I am him." His voice cracked like splintered wood. Claire whispered, "And the child? What will she see when she looks at you?" His throat tightened as tears pooled. "But," he whispered, "maybe she'll see nothing. Maybe she'll see a mistake." The rain grew heavier, drowning out their silence. Claire's face wavered between pity and distance, her heart fracturing but unable to mend his. Later that night, Ethan sat alone at the kitchen table, light from a single bulb above casting harsh shadows. He whispered, "I can't do this." His voice cracked, echoing in the stillness. Memories of his father's rage filled his mind. He muttered, "He left me with scars no one could see." His hand trembled as he touched the DNA papers beside him. "And now I'll pass them to her," he said bitterly. The silence felt alive, pressing down like a weight. Ethan's eyes blurred with tears as he whispered, "But she's innocent. She doesn't deserve my curse." His breath faltered, every word unraveling him further. He pressed his fist against the table, fighting himself, fighting the ghost of a man he swore never to become. The baby's presence echoed in Ethan's mind like a ghost he could not shake. He imagined her small face, the cry that pierced him. He whispered, "She's not at fault. I am." His reflection in the darkened window stared back, hollow eyes full of shame. Claire entered quietly, her voice low. "Ethan, you have to face it." He shook his head, whispering, "I'm broken, Claire. I don't know how to be what she needs." Claire's lips trembled, torn between leaving him or holding him. She whispered, "If you walk away, you'll prove them all right." His body tensed, words choking in his throat. For the first time, he realized the fight was not against the court or even Claire, but against himself. Ethan collapsed onto the sofa, his chest heaving, his mind spiraling. He whispered, "I never asked for this." Claire sat opposite, her hands clasped, her voice shaking as she said, "Neither did she." His heart clenched at those words. He whispered, "I can't even remember her mother. How can I remember how to be a father?" Claire's tears finally spilled, her voice soft but heavy. "You either run, or you rise." Ethan closed his eyes, feeling the weight of his past pressing down, but somewhere in the cracks, a sliver of strength began to burn. His voice shook as he whispered, "I'm so afraid." Claire said, "Then you're already closer than him. Fear means you care." Silence lingered, broken only by the sound of rain easing outside. Ethan stood outside his parents' old home, the paint chipped, the yard unkempt, memories pressing down like ghosts. He whispered, "They'll never forgive me." Claire said softly, "You need answers, not forgiveness." The door opened, and his mother, Margaret, stepped out, her face stern. She said, "What have you done, Ethan? Another life broken?" His chest tightened, words choking him. "It's not what it looks like," he pleaded. Margaret shook her head, her voice sharp. "The child carries your blood. You think the world will ignore that?" Ethan staggered under her gaze, shame burning his skin. Claire tried to speak, but Margaret cut her off with cold silence. Ethan whispered, "I never wanted this. I don't even remember her." Margaret's eyes narrowed, as though she had heard every lie before. The weight of his family's rejection pressed on him like chains he couldn't break. Inside the dim living room, Margaret's words cut like knives. She said, "You've shamed us, Ethan, just like your father." His heart slammed against his ribs as he whispered, "Don't say his name." Claire tried to interject, her voice trembling. "It's not what you think." But Margaret raised her hand, silencing her. She said, "The whole neighborhood whispers already. They say you've brought another mistake into this family." Ethan dropped his head, tears burning. He muttered, "It's not her fault, it's mine." Margaret's glare softened for a second, but the walls of judgment held firm. Claire reached for Ethan's arm, whispering, "You can't keep punishing yourself." His eyes remained fixed on the floor, his body collapsing under the weight of rejection. Later that night, Ethan sat alone at a cafe corner booth, shadows stretching long across the empty tables. His friend Daniel entered, shaking his head. He said, "You're poison, Ethan. Everyone knows it." Ethan whispered, "You were supposed to stand by me." Daniel laughed bitterly. "I can't tie myself to your scandal. You'll drag everyone down." Ethan's chest collapsed under the words, his stomach sinking. "Daniel, please. I didn't choose this," he said. Daniel leaned closer, voice cold. "You chose the lies. Now you'll carry them." Ethan gripped the table edge, his nails pressing white against the wood. The silence between them was heavier than the air. Ethan whispered, "I thought you were my brother." Daniel stood, his chair scraping loudly, leaving Ethan with only emptiness and betrayal. News traveled faster than truth. Ethan walked down the street, whispers chasing him like shadows. A man muttered, "That's him. The liar." A woman hissed, "Shameful father." Ethan kept his head down, steps heavy. Claire walked beside him, her face pale, her hands tucked into her sleeves. She whispered, "They'll never let us breathe." Ethan whispered back, "Then maybe I should disappear." Her eyes widened, fear sharp in her voice. "Don't you dare." But the crowd's murmurs grew louder, faces turning, eyes piercing. Ethan felt suffocated, his chest tightening. He whispered, "Every step I take, they drag me deeper." Claire grabbed his arm, whispering fiercely, "Then fight. Don't let them break you." But his spirit bent under the storm of judgment closing in. Ethan sat in the courtroom again, papers stacked before him like weapons. The lawyer across the aisle smirked, saying, "Responsibility isn't optional." His chest burned, hands trembling. Claire whispered, "Stay strong." But his voice cracked as he said, "Every choice feels like a trap." The judge looked at him with weary eyes, saying, "You must decide." Ethan's mind screamed with impossible options: keep the child and lose Claire, or walk away and lose himself. His breath grew ragged, the world tilting. He whispered, "How do I choose between my life and hers?" Claire's hand rested on his, but her silence said more than words. The courtroom blurred, the weight of every decision pressing him toward collapse. The evening was heavy, rain hammering against the apartment windows as Ethan paced the floor. Claire sat with folded arms, her face pale. She said, "You're hiding something." He froze, whispering, "No, I swear I'm not." Claire leaned forward, voice sharp. "Then why did Margaret tell me there are secrets in this family you never faced?" His stomach twisted, his skin clammy. He muttered, "Because the past is poison." Claire's eyes narrowed, trembling. "Then tell me, whose child is she really?" The silence felt endless. Ethan pressed a hand to his head, whispering, "Don't ask me that." Claire's tears fell, her voice cracking. "If you don't, someone else will." The truth hovered in the air, heavier than the storm outside. The next day, Ethan stood in Margaret's living room, his voice low. "You told her something. Tell me now." Margaret's lips pressed thin as she whispered, "The baby isn't hers alone." Ethan's chest collapsed. "What are you saying?" Margaret's eyes glistened with guilt. She said, "Your brother knew her before you ever did." Ethan staggered, whispering, "Daniel?" Margaret nodded, her face trembling. He begged me to protect him, to protect the family name. Ethan's pulse roared in his ears, rage and betrayal twisting inside him. He muttered, "All this time, it wasn't me." Margaret's tears fell as she whispered, "I thought I was saving you, but lies don't stay buried." Ethan stormed into the cafe where Daniel sat, his face dark. He slammed the table, shouting, "It was you!" Daniel's smirk faltered, his eyes darting. He said, "You weren't supposed to know." Ethan's voice broke, "You let me drown for you." Daniel leaned back, his voice cold. "You were always better at carrying the blame." Ethan's fists shook, his jaw tight, rage boiling. "She's your daughter," he whispered, trembling. Daniel's silence was the cruelest answer. Ethan felt the ground vanish beneath him, his heart torn apart. He whispered again, "You betrayed me." Daniel muttered, "I protected myself." The cafe air grew thick with tension, as if every word could spark fire. Claire sat in the apartment when Ethan returned, his face pale and broken. She whispered, "What happened?" He dropped into a chair, his voice cracking. "She's not mine. She's Daniel's." Claire's breath caught, her hands trembling. She said, "All this pain, and it was built on a lie." Ethan pressed his palms to his face, whispering, "They made me believe I carried this shame. I carried his sins." Claire knelt beside him, tears running. She said, "You should have told me sooner." His eyes lifted, hollow. "I only just learned myself." The silence was heavier than words. The betrayal hung like a storm refusing to pass. That night, Ethan stood in the darkened street, the rain soaking his clothes, his breath visible in the cold air. His voice cracked as he whispered, "I lived a lie." Claire stood behind him, arms wrapped around herself, whispering, "So what now?" He turned, his face fierce despite the tears. He said, "Now I fight, not for their lies, for her." Claire's lips trembled, eyes searching his face. She whispered, "Even if she's not yours?" His chest rose sharply, his voice raw, "Because she still deserves someone who won't leave her." The rain pounded harder, the truth shaping him into something unbreakable. The betrayal burned, but inside it, resolve began to rise. The courtroom was silent, the storm outside echoing in the walls. Ethan stood, his voice shaking as he said, "You all built this lie around me." Daniel sat across the aisle, calm but cold, his eyes refusing to flinch. Claire whispered, "Ethan, don't lose yourself." He raised his trembling hands, saying, "I carried your shame, Daniel. I lived in your shadow." Daniel smirked faintly, replying, "You were always better at being broken." The judge slammed the gavel, demanding order, but the room vibrated with tension. Ethan's chest rose violently, his voice cracking, "She's your daughter, not mine, but I will fight for her." Gasps echoed across the gallery. Claire's tears streamed silently, as Ethan's truth cut deeper than the storm. Margaret's voice cut through the chaos rising from the gallery. She said, "Stop this madness." All eyes turned to her. Her face was streaked with tears as she whispered, "It's true. I protected Daniel." Ethan's knees buckled, his breath ragged. He shouted, "You betrayed me." Margaret sobbed, "I thought I was saving you." The judge's gavel struck again, the echo rattling like thunder. Claire's voice broke as she said, "This family is tearing itself apart." Daniel's eyes darkened, his smirk gone, his silence finally damning. Ethan's voice roared, trembling with rage, "You let me carry chains that were never mine." Margaret lowered her head, broken under her own lies. Ethan turned toward Daniel, his face red with fury. He shouted, "Look at me, tell them she's yours." Daniel's fists clenched on the table, his jaw grinding. He whispered, "You don't know what you're asking." Ethan slammed his hand down, shaking the wood. "Say it." His voice cracked, raw with anguish. Claire's hand trembled as she reached for Ethan, whispering, "Please, don't destroy yourself." Ethan's eyes were fire, his words choking out, "I've already been destroyed." Daniel's silence stretched, suffocating the room. Finally his voice slithered out, low but sharp. Fine, she's mine. But I'll never claim her. Ethan's scream filled the chamber, his soul ripping apart. The courtroom erupted with chaos, voices clashing like thunder. The judge shouted for silence, pounding the gavel. Ethan's body shook, his tears mixing with rage. He whispered, "She deserves better than all of this." Daniel leaned back, his eyes empty, his words venomous. "She'll never know me." Ethan lunged forward, restrained only by Claire's desperate grip. She cried out, "Ethan, don't!" Margaret collapsed in the gallery, her sobs echoing louder than the gavel. Ethan's voice shook the walls as he roared, "I will not let her grow up abandoned like I did." The chamber froze, every face staring at him, every word striking like lightning. The storm outside grew fiercer, wind rattling the courtroom windows as Ethan stood tall, his chest heaving. His voice cut through the silence, raw but steady. "I'll raise her. Even if she's not mine, I'll be the one who stays." Claire's breath caught, her eyes wide with shock and sorrow. Daniel's gaze turned away, his silence the final betrayal. Margaret sobbed into her hands, broken under the weight of truth. The judge's voice softened as he said, "Your choice defines more than your blood." Ethan's eyes burned, his fists trembling at his side. He whispered, "I choose her." The words fell heavy, carving a new path through shattered ground. The storm had passed, leaving the city soaked in silence. Ethan stood on the courthouse steps, shoulders heavy but eyes steadier than before. Claire stepped beside him, her face pale, voice low. She whispered, "You've changed everything." Ethan's breath caught as he said, "I didn't want this fight, but she deserves more than silence." Claire's tears shimmered as she whispered, "And what about us?" His eyes darkened, words heavy. This was broken long before the truth. A pause lingered, rain dripping from the roof above, the world damp with aftermath. Claire turned her gaze away, whispering, "I don't know if I can stay." Ethan's chest tightened, yet his voice steadied. "Then at least know I won't leave her." Later that day, Ethan sat in a social worker's office. The hum of fluorescent lights overhead. The woman across the desk spoke calmly, "You're asking for custody knowing she's not yours." Ethan's voice cracked but steady, "Yes, because she deserves someone who won't walk away." The woman's eyes softened, her pen pausing. "This won't be easy," she said. Ethan whispered, "Neither was surviving my childhood." His voice trembled but carried resolve. Papers sat between them, heavy with decisions. He pressed his hand flat against the desk, whispering, "I choose her." Silence filled the office, not empty but alive with a fragile hope. That evening, Ethan sat on his sofa, the apartment quiet except for the ticking clock. Claire stood near the window, staring into the dark street. She whispered, "You've chosen her, not me." Ethan's heart ached as he said, "I didn't want to lose you, but I can't abandon her." Claire's lips trembled, her tears silent. She said, "I wanted a future with you, but not this." Ethan lowered his gaze, voice broken, "Then maybe our future ends here." The silence felt final, sharp, yet necessary. Claire's hand lingered on the window glass before she whispered, "Goodbye, Ethan?" He closed his eyes, the echo of loss cutting deeper than any courtroom. Margaret visited Ethan days later, her face lined with guilt, her voice shaking. She said, "I destroyed us with lies." Ethan's eyes were weary but calm as he answered, "Truth doesn't heal overnight." She sat across from him, tears spilling. "I thought I was protecting you," she whispered. Ethan looked away, voice low. "All you did was chain me to pain that wasn't mine." Margaret sobbed softly, her hands twisting in her lap. "Can you ever forgive me?" she asked. His chest rose heavy, his words deliberate. "Forgiveness will come, but not today." Silence hung like fragile glass between them, ready to shatter or heal. 1 week later, Ethan held the baby in his arms for the first time, her tiny fingers curling around his. His voice trembled as he whispered, "I'm not your blood, but I'll be your father." The baby stirred, her small breath warming his chest. The room was silent, filled only with fragile life. Tears welled in his eyes, spilling freely. He whispered, "You'll never know the emptiness I knew. You'll never feel abandoned." His words shook but carried strength. For the first time, the chains of his past loosened. He whispered again, steady this time, "I choose you, always." The weight of betrayal turned into fragile redemption. The night was quiet, the city distant beyond the apartment window. Ethan sat alone at the table, a cup of untouched coffee cooling before him. His hand trembled as he whispered, "I never asked for this life." The baby slept in the next room, her soft breaths carrying through the silence. He pressed his forehead against his palm, voice breaking, "But maybe she asked for me." The air was heavy with unspoken grief, yet somewhere in it, a fragile thread of hope lingered. Ethan lifted his head, his eyes red but steady, whispering, "I won't run, not this time." The weight of the past bore down on him, but the choice ahead burned brighter. The next morning, Ethan stood at the crib, the baby's small hand gripping his finger. His breath caught as he whispered, "You don't know me yet, but you will." Sunlight streamed through sheer curtains, painting the room in gold. His chest trembled, words spilling, "I'll never leave you, not like he left me." The baby stirred, eyes blinking open, unknowing but piercing. Ethan's tears fell freely, his voice soft but firm, "I'll be your anchor, even if I break." The moment wrapped him in fragile absolution, his pain reshaped into promise. Later, Ethan walked through the park, the baby in his arms, wrapped in a blanket. Strangers passed, their eyes curious, some warm, others judging. Ethan's heart raced, but his steps did not falter. He whispered, "They can say what they want. I know what's true." A breeze rustled the trees, sunlight flickering through leaves. The world felt hostile and forgiving all at once. Claire's absence weighed on him like a shadow, but the child's warmth steadied his grip. His voice shook, "You will grow knowing love, even if it's broken love." The path stretched long, but for the first time, he chose to walk it forward. At dusk, Ethan visited his father's grave, the headstone weathered and cold. He stood silent for a long moment, baby resting against his chest. His voice cracked as he whispered, "You left me nothing but scars." Wind moved through the trees, stirring fallen leaves across the ground. Ethan's jaw tightened, his voice firmer now, "But she will never know that emptiness." The grave stood as a reminder of abandonment, yet his choice stood in defiance. He pressed a hand to the stone, whispering, "The chain ends here." His tears fell, but this time, they felt like release, not burden. That night, Ethan sat in the nursery, the baby asleep in his arms, the room dim but calm. His breath trembled as he whispered, "They tried to bury me in lies, but you will know who I am." His eyes glistened, his voice steady despite the weight. "I'm not perfect. I may fail, but I will stay." Silence filled the room, thick yet tender. He pressed his lips to the baby's forehead, whispering the final vow, "I choose you. Always." The words lingered, hanging in the air like a vow carved into stone. The room was still, the world holding its breath, as Ethan's whisper became the last line of his story.